When I first walked into Rosehill Manor, the senior living facility looked nothing short of perfect. Bright, spotless halls, the faint smell of lavender, and soft classical music echoing through the lobby. It felt more like a luxury hotel than the place I would be calling home. My daughter-in-law, Carol, had insisted this was the best place for me after my fall last winter. I didn't argue, I was tired of being a burden. At the front desk, a young receptionist with perfect curls and an overly white smile greeted us. "Welcome to Rosehill Manor, Mrs. Patterson. We've been expecting you." As she handed me some papers to sign, I noticed an older woman standing a few feet away, mopping the floor. Her gray hair was tied in a loose bun, and her uniform looked worn, the color faded from years of washing. She caught my eye and gave me a faint smile, the kind that felt familiar somehow. Before I could return it, Carol leaned over and whispered sharply, "Don't talk to the old lady. She's just the cleaner." I froze, startled by her tone. The cleaner's eyes flickered down, and she turned away silently, pushing her mop bucket toward the far end of the hall. Something about that moment unsettled me, not just Carol's rudeness, but the way the woman moved, slow and deliberate, as if she'd been there for a very long time. As the receptionist continued her cheerful explanations about meal times and activities, my mind kept drifting back to the cleaner. I couldn't help but wonder, why did she look at me that way? That night, as I unpacked my things in the small but cozy room they'd assigned me, I swore I heard footsteps outside my door, slow, steady, and stopping right before my room. When I opened it, no one was there. Only the faint smell of lavender remained, stronger now, almost chokingly sweet. Something about Rosehill Manor didn't feel quite right. And somehow, I had the feeling that the cleaner knew exactly why. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the lace curtains, and for a moment, everything seemed perfectly normal. The staff brought breakfast to my room, oatmeal, toast, and coffee, and smiled politely before hurrying away. Still, I couldn't shake off the memory of those footsteps outside my door last night. After breakfast, I decided to take a slow walk around the building. The place was beautiful, wide corridors lined with framed paintings of smiling families, fresh flowers on every table, and not a speck of dust anywhere. But it also felt staged, like everything was just a little too perfect. I passed a few other residents sitting quietly in the lounge, staring blankly at the TV. No one spoke. Their eyes seemed glazed, as if they were present but not really there. As I turned the corner toward the back hallway, I saw her again, the cleaner. She was polishing a window this time, her back slightly hunched. I hesitated, remembering Carol's warning, but something inside me refused to listen. "Good morning," I said softly. She froze. Slowly, she turned her head toward me. Her eyes, pale blue and weary, met mine. "You shouldn't be here alone," she whispered. Her voice was hoarse, trembling, as though she hadn't spoken to anyone in a long time. Before I could respond, a sharp voice echoed down the hall. "Mrs. Patterson." It was one of the nurses, a tall woman with an artificial smile. She walked briskly toward me, placing a firm hand on my arm. "You're not supposed to be in this section. Let's get you back to the recreation area, all right." I looked back over my shoulder, but the cleaner was gone. Not down the hall, not behind a door, just gone. That night, I woke up to a whisper. At first, I thought it was part of a dream, a faint, broken voice saying my name. Then it came again, clearer this time, right by my ear. "Don't trust them, please." The lavender smell filled the air again, thick and suffocating. I sat up, heart pounding, staring into the dim hallway light spilling through the open door. And there she was, the cleaner, standing at the end of the hall, motionless, her face hidden in shadow. Then, as suddenly as she appeared, the lights flickered, and she was gone. The following morning, I felt drained, like I hadn't slept at all. Every creak of the hallway, every whisper of the wind made my skin crawl. I tried convincing myself that what I saw last night was a trick of the light, but deep down, I knew better. At breakfast, I sat next to Mr. Henderson, a quiet man who always wore a brown cardigan and never looked up from his plate. I decided to test the waters. "Do you know the cleaning lady who works here?" I asked casually. His fork froze halfway to his mouth. Slowly, his eyes lifted to mine, watery and frightened. "Don't talk about her," he muttered. "They don't like that." "Who doesn't?" I pressed. He shook his head. Just don't. You'll end up like the others. Before I could ask what he meant, a nurse appeared behind me, her voice sweet but firm. Mrs. Patterson, it's time for your medication. That afternoon, I pretended to nap after lunch, waiting until the hallway was quiet. Then I slipped out of my room and headed toward the east wing, the one the nurse told me was under renovation. I remembered seeing the cleaner disappear in that direction the day before. The air grew colder the further I went. The smell of lavender was stronger here, but beneath it lingered something else, a faint, metallic tang that reminded me of rust, or blood. At the end of the corridor, a faded, "Do not enter" sign hung crookedly on a door. The handle was cold to the touch. When I turned it, the door creaked open to reveal a small, dimly lit room. It wasn't a storage area, as I expected. It looked like a bedroom. An old iron bed stood in the center, the mattress thin and sunken. A mop leaned in the corner, and a faded name tag lay on the dresser, Evelyn. My heart pounded. I remembered the cleaner's face, her pale blue eyes. Evelyn. There were photos on the wall, black and white snapshots of smiling residents from decades ago. And in the corner, a stack of old newspapers yellowed with age. One headline caught my eye. Nurse found dead in storage room, Rosehill Manor staff member vanishes without a trace. Before I could read further, the door slammed shut behind me. I froze. The lights flickered. And from the darkness, that same hoarse whisper filled the air again, closer this time, right behind me. You shouldn't have come here. I spun around, my breath catching in my throat, but no one was there. Only the faint scent of lavender, swirling in the still air like invisible smoke. My trembling hand found the wall, searching for the light switch. The bulb above flickered weakly, throwing broken shadows across the room. Who's there? I whispered. The room stayed silent, except for the faint dripping of a leaky pipe somewhere beyond the wall. When I finally steadied myself enough to pick up the newspaper again, I saw the date, June 12, 1989, almost 40 years ago. According to the article, a nurse named Evelyn Moore had been accused of negligence after a resident died mysteriously one night. But before police could question her, Evelyn vanished. Some believed she fled. Others claimed she took her own life in the basement of Rosehill Manor. And now, she was the cleaner. A chill ran down my spine. Had I really seen a ghost? Or was someone trying to make me believe I had? The doorknob rattled suddenly. I froze. Slowly, the door opened, but it wasn't Evelyn. It was the head nurse, Ms. Dalton. Her usually sweet expression had hardened into something cold and sharp. Mrs. Patterson, she said softly. You shouldn't be here. Her tone wasn't angry, it was warning. I got lost, I lied, trying to hide the newspaper behind my back. She stepped forward, eyes narrowing. This section is closed for a reason. There's black mold, asbestos, it's unsafe. Her gaze darted to the dresser, to the tag with Evelyn's name on it. You mustn't touch anything. She guided me out of the room, her grip tight on my arm. As we walked down the hall, I noticed she didn't lock the door behind her. She just whispered, almost to herself, that room should have been sealed years ago. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I kept hearing faint knocks on the wall behind my bed, rhythmic, almost like Morse code. Tap, tap, pause, tap. When I finally sat up and turned on the lamp, something was lying on my nightstand that hadn't been there before. A faded photo. It showed Evelyn, smiling, with a group of nurses. And right beside her was a young man in a wheelchair. Someone had written on the back in shaky handwriting. He didn't fall. They pushed him. I stared at the photo, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. Evelyn wasn't just haunting this place. She was trying to tell me something. I couldn't get the photograph out of my mind. Evelyn's smile, the young man's lifeless eyes, the chilling words scrawled on the back, he didn't fall. They pushed him. Who was he? And what did Evelyn mean? The next morning, during breakfast, I quietly slipped the photo into my cardigan pocket. I needed answers, but I had to be careful. The staff here had eyes everywhere, and after my little incident in the East Wing, they were watching me more closely. While everyone else dozed off in the TV lounge, I made my way to the small library on the second floor. It was rarely used, mostly filled with outdated romance novels and dusty local archives. Perfect for snooping. I searched through the old newspaper clippings and facility records. Hours passed, and then I found it, A small article from 1988. Resident dies in tragic stairwell accident, investigation closed. The victim's name was Thomas Hargrove, age 32. Paralyzed from the waist down after a car crash, he had been admitted to Rosehill for physical therapy. The report said he fell from the third-floor stairwell one night. No foul play suspected. But there, in the photo I held, was that same man, sitting beside Evelyn. My stomach turned. The handwriting on the back wasn't random. Evelyn had seen what happened, and someone had made sure she stayed silent. A shadow fell across the pages. I looked up, and nearly jumped. It was Mr. Henderson, the quiet man from breakfast. His wrinkled face looked more alert than I'd ever seen it. "You found it, didn't you?" he whispered. "Found what?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He glanced toward the doorway, then leaned in. "They said it was an accident, but it wasn't. Thomas was going to expose them, the fake prescriptions, the money that disappeared." Evelyn knew too much. My mouth went dry. "What happened to her?" He swallowed hard. "They said she ran away, but some nights, I hear her mopping. She never left this place." Before I could respond, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, like a cart slamming into a wall. The lights flickered, then dimmed. When we stepped out, the corridor was empty. But at the far end, faint wet footprints trailed across the polished floor, leading straight toward my room. That night, I locked my door, but it didn't make me feel safer. At exactly 2:47 a.m., I woke to a sound that froze my blood. A slow, steady swish, 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 the unmistakable rhythm of a mop sliding across the floor. And then, through the crack beneath my door, a pale, trembling hand slipped a folded piece of paper into my room. On it, in faded ink, were just 4 words. "They're still doing it." I sat frozen on my bed, staring at that folded piece of paper. "They're still doing it." My mind raced. Doing what? Killing patients. Covering up something bigger. My hands trembled as I unfolded the rest of the note. Scrawled beneath the message was an address, just a room number, B12. The basement. That morning, I pretended nothing had happened. I smiled at the nurses, took my pills though I tucked them under my tongue instead of swallowing, and joined the others for morning exercise. But all I could think about was that number, B12. By noon, when the staff was distracted serving lunch, I slipped away and found the stairwell door labeled, Maintenance Access. The metal handle was warm, almost as if someone had just used it. The basement was darker than I imagined. The smell hit me first, mildew, bleach, and something faintly sour. My shoes echoed against the concrete as I followed the faint hum of old pipes until I reached a small metal door with faded paint, B12. It wasn't locked. Inside were rows of filing cabinets, stacked high and covered in dust. Patient records. Boxes labeled with names I didn't recognize. I pulled open one drawer, and froze. The first file I saw was Thomas Hargrove. Inside were photos, police style, black and white, showing his body at the bottom of the stairwell. But there was another set of images beneath them, internal memos between staff members. Greater than, subject was found at 3:12 a.m. Cause of death, blunt force trauma. Story confirmed, accidental fall. Then, scribbled in red pen at the bottom. Greater than, keep it consistent. Evelyn's testimony will not be an issue. My breath caught. Someone had silenced her, permanently. I dug deeper, and that's when I saw a newer file, dated just last year. Patient, Linda Monroe. Age 78. Cause of death, cardiac arrest, unverified. The attached photo made my stomach twist. It was the woman who used to sit beside me in the lounge, the one who disappeared 2 weeks ago. They said she'd been transferred to another facility. I heard footsteps above me, slow, deliberate. Dust fell from the ceiling. Someone else was down here. I stuffed the files into my cardigan and quietly backed toward the exit. But as I reached for the doorknob, the faint sound of a mop sliding across the floor echoed behind me. Swish, swish, swish. I turned. Evelyn was standing at the far end of the room, her face pale and blurred by the flickering light. "You have to stop them," she whispered. "Before it happens again." Then, a sudden slam. The door shut tight, and everything went black. The light went out completely, plunging me into thick, suffocating darkness. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I pressed my back to the cold wall, trying not to make a sound. Somewhere in that blackness, I could hear movement, slow, dragging steps. Evelyn, I whispered, my voice shaking. No answer. Only the soft rhythm of water dripping from a leaky pipe. Then came that sound again. Swish, 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 the mop gliding across the concrete. I fumbled for my phone, but there was no signal. The faint glow from the screen barely illuminated the room, yet it was enough to see that the door I'd come through was now padlocked from the outside. Trapped. Help me, a faint voice whispered behind me. I spun around and dropped my phone. The light rolled across the floor, and there, in its weak glow, I saw something that made my stomach twist. A small section of the wall was different from the rest, newer paint, smoother concrete. My trembling fingers traced along the edge until I found a loose corner. I dug my nails in and pulled. A chunk of plaster broke away, revealing something underneath. Not just one thing, many things. Behind that wall were black plastic bags. Dozens of them, each sealed tight, each the size of a human body. I staggered back, covering my mouth to keep from screaming. The smell hit me then, sickly sweet, rotting, barely masked by bleach and lavender. They said it was for renovations, a voice whispered behind me. But they were hiding us. I turned, and there she was, Evelyn. Only now, I could see her more clearly than ever. Her uniform was torn, her skin pale as candle wax, eyes sunken but kind. I tried to stop them, she said softly, her voice trembling. They wanted money, government grants for every patient who died naturally. But Thomas found out. So did I. My throat tightened. And they killed you. She nodded once. They're still doing it. They move the bodies, down here. The records are fake. The staff changes every few years, but the same man runs it all. The same man? I asked. Her gaze shifted behind me, toward the stairwell door. He's here. I turned just in time to see the beam of a flashlight sweep across the room. A male voice, deep, cold, called out. Mrs. Patterson, you shouldn't be down here. The head administrator. Mr. Lang. He stepped closer, his smile calm and practiced. You've seen too much. Before I could move, Evelyn's hand clutched mine, ice cold, trembling. Run, she hissed. And just as Lang lunged forward, every light in the basement flickered violently, then exploded, plunging us all into darkness again. That's when I felt her hand push me toward the stairs. Go, she whispered. I'll handle him. The darkness swallowed everything. The air was thick with dust and the acrid stench of burnt wires from the shattered bulbs. My hands scraped against the concrete wall as I groped for the stairwell door, my heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. Behind me, I heard chaos, the sound of metal crashing, a strangled scream, and then, silence. Evelyn, I whispered. No reply, only the faint hiss of leaking pipes. I didn't wait to find out what had happened, I ran. The door to the stairs was half ajar, and I squeezed through it, stumbling upward 2 steps at a time. My lungs burned, my knees ached, but I didn't dare stop. Somewhere below, I thought I heard footsteps, heavier, faster, chasing me. By the time I reached the ground floor, the building was eerily quiet. The lobby lights flickered like dying candles. The receptionist's desk was empty, though a pot of lavender still steamed faintly on the counter, filling the air with that cloying, sickly sweet scent. Mrs. Patterson. I froze. It was Ms. Dalton, the head nurse. Her smile was brittle, forced. You shouldn't be wandering around. It's late. My voice trembled. Where's Mr. Lang? Her eyes flicked briefly toward the basement door, then back to me. Mr. Lang. He's busy with paperwork. But there was something in her tone. Something off. Her hands were trembling. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. You know what's down there, don't you? You know what they did. For the first time since I'd met her, the mask cracked. Her eyes glistened. You need to leave, Mrs. Patterson. Now. Before they decide you saw too much. Who are they? I demanded. She opened her mouth to speak, then stopped. Her gaze shifted past my shoulder, and her face drained of color. I turned. Mr. Lang was standing at the end of the hallway, his white coat streaked with something dark. Blood. His expression was calm, but his eyes, cold, glassy, inhuman. Ms. Dalton, he said softly. Take Mrs. Patterson back to her room. Dalton shook her head, tears streaming down her face. No more, sir. No more. Before I could move, Lang raised his hand. A glint of metal, a syringe. He lunged forward, but Dalton shoved him away, shouting, "Run!" I didn't look back. I ran through the hall. Through the front doors, into the cold night air. My breath tore from my lungs, and I didn't stop until I reached the main road. A car screeched to a halt, headlights blinding me. A voice shouted, "Ma'am, are you all right?" It was a police cruiser. I collapsed into their arms, sobbing. Behind me, Rosehill Manor stood silent, except for one flickering window in the basement, glowing faintly. And just before the officers drove me away, I saw her. Evelyn, standing in that window, her hand pressed to the glass. Her lips moved slowly, but I understood every word. "Don't let them bury it again." The next morning, I woke up in a hospital bed, the real kind, not the kind Rosehill Manor pretended to have. The officer who'd found me, Detective Harris, was standing by the door with a notebook in hand. "You're lucky to be alive, Mrs. Patterson," he said. "We went to Rosehill Manor after your call. What exactly did you see down there?" I told him everything: Evelyn, the files, the bodies in the basement, Mr. Lang, the lavender smell that always followed the deaths. As I spoke, Harris' expression darkened. He didn't interrupt, not once. When I finished, he sighed and closed his notebook. "We're sending a team right now. If what you're saying is true," he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. By afternoon, police cars and forensic vans surrounded Rosehill Manor. News crews gathered outside as white-suited investigators carried out boxes of documents and evidence bags. From my hospital window, I could see the chaos unfold live on the TV. Then the reporter said it, words that sent chills through me. "Greater than, authorities confirm multiple human remains have been discovered sealed behind the basement walls of Rosehill Manor. The identities are being verified, but records suggest some victims date back over 3 decades. I pressed my hand to my mouth. It was real. Every terrifying thing I'd seen was real. The next image on the screen froze my blood. They were carrying out a stretcher, covered completely with a black sheet. The caption read, "Body of Administrator Richard Lang found in facility basement." The reporter continued, "Greater than, sources claim Lang suffered severe head trauma, consistent with blunt force injury. Investigators are unsure how he died, but one officer described the scene as impossible." I leaned closer to the TV. Behind the flashing police lights, I saw it, a figure standing in one of the basement windows. Pale, motionless, watching. Evelyn. 2 days later, Detective Harris visited me again. He looked exhausted but relieved. "You were right about everything," he said. "The financial records show millions siphoned through fake patient deaths. Lang had been covering it up for years. We also found an old personnel file from 1989. He handed me the folder. On the cover, in faded ink, Evelyn Moore. Inside was a photo of her, young, smiling, holding a bouquet of lavender. The last line of the file made my skin crawl. Greater than, employee terminated, June 13, 1989. Cause of death, accidental fall, basement stairwell. I looked up at him, voice trembling. "She didn't fall." He nodded slowly. "No, ma'am, we don't think she did either." That night, I dreamed of her again, Evelyn standing by my bed, her face calm, her voice gentle. "It's over now," she whispered. "They can't hurt anyone else." I wanted to thank her, but before I could speak, she faded, like mist at dawn. Only the faint smell of lavender lingered when I woke. Weeks passed. Rosehill Manor was shut down indefinitely, police tape wrapped around the gates like a yellow warning to the world. News outlets called it the Rosehill Scandal, though to me, it was more than a scandal. It was a graveyard with polished floors. I'd been staying in a small rehabilitation center across town. It was quiet, bright, and, most importantly, honest. But every night, I still dreamed of Evelyn. The lavender smell never really left me. Sometimes, I woke to find it faintly hanging in the air, as if she'd just been there, checking in on me. Detective Harris came to see me one last time before closing the case. He looked tired, and uneasy. "There's something you should know," he said, pulling a manila envelope from his coat. "During demolition of the basement wall, we found one more body, hidden deeper than the rest." My heart stopped. Who was it? He hesitated. "Evelyn Moore." I felt the blood drain from my face. "That's not possible. She helped me escape. She talked to me." He gave a slow, careful nod. "I believe you." He opened the envelope and showed me a photograph, her uniform, still recognizable, the faded name tag, E. Moore. Her remains were found right behind the section of wall where I'd seen the black bags. The forensic report said she'd been struck in the head before being sealed inside. They killed her, I whispered. They killed her and made her clean their sins forever. Harris exhaled deeply. We found something else, too. A box, wrapped in cloth, buried near her body. Inside was this. He handed me a small, pressed bundle of dried lavender tied with a ribbon. Attached was a note in faded handwriting. Greater than, for whoever finally listens, thank you. Set them free. Tears blurred my vision. I held the lavender to my chest, the scent soft and old, but comforting. Evelyn hadn't just been trapped in that place, she'd been waiting for someone to hear her. That night, I went to bed holding that lavender bundle beside me. Around 3 a.m., I woke suddenly, not from fear this time, but from warmth. The room was filled with a soft, golden light, like sunlight underwater. Evelyn stood at the foot of my bed. No bruises, no shadows, just peace. You kept your promise, she said softly. It's done now. I nodded, tears spilling down my cheeks. Rest, Evelyn, please. She smiled, the same faint, kind smile I'd seen that first day at Rosehill. Then she turned toward the window, where morning light was just beginning to break through. And as she faded, the scent of lavender filled the air one last time, gentle, clean, and pure. When the nurse came in the next morning, she found the bundle of lavender on my nightstand, but the ribbon was gone. In its place was a single word, written in delicate handwriting on the table's surface.